Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklin podcast. I am a woman on a mission to assemble a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all starts with one thing, a deep understanding of human motivation, why people do what they do, and the forces that drive them. This is episode 22, and we've been working on measuring a character trait by measuring voices. Tonight we will conclude that topic by identifying the true continuum by which we can measure the dimensions of a character trait. So let's get going. When we first talked about measuring a character trait, we looked at a picture like this. Virtue on the one side, vice on the other, with the idea that you could somehow measure a continuum between the positive and negative, and that would give you the dimensions of a virtue. But I said no, it's more complicated than that, because many virtues are such that even a touch of vice ruins the whole picture. So we needed something a little more subtle, and we've been developing it now. This is our third and our concluding night developing that. We left off with a picture like this, where we saw that there was a struggle, emotions of victory, emotions of loss, and that as we lost the voices of victory, we ascended up the circle into the zones of chaos, and to the point where the character trait was just a pinnacle trait that was completely inaccessible. On the other hand, as the voices of victory grew louder and the voices of loss grew quieter, we reached the more stable areas of the anchor traits and the base traits into the zones of being. So therefore, we noted that there were actually three voices that were playing a role. So, in point of fact, when the voice for victory begins to die out and all we have left is the voice for loss, we don't lose the struggle. The struggle stays there, but it just becomes a nagging voice that has no power. On the other hand, when the voice of victory grows and grows and grows, for quite some time we still have the voice of struggle, but the voice of struggle is tickling temptation to, maybe we'll let it go this time. Not terribly hard to resist. And this is how we expressed it. As the loss side grows, we move up the zones. As the victory side grows, we move down the zones. And now we're ready to take a look at our actual metrics. If we can find a way to measure the volume of those voices, the voices of loss and the voices of victory, that will provide us a continuum. We break it into zones for convenience, and especially for fiction writers, whom I talk to, because we don't have to be quite so precise. But the reality is the entire continuum between this volume of the victory voices and the volume of the loss voices, that we will see is the dimension on which we can measure a character trait. So now that we know how any given character trait functions across the zones of awareness and therefore helps to govern how much that character trait controls the behavior of our character, we can see the power of these zones of awareness. But we have not yet to take a look at the fourth element of our taxonomy, which is to say, what are the character traits themselves and how are they organized? If we want to find out what are the character traits and how are they grouped? The interesting thing is we need to look deeper. We need to dive deeper, deeper, deeper into what does the struggle look like for this character trait? What does the loss state look like for this character trait? What does the victory state look like for this character trait? And that is where we will find and be able to identify the character traits that we're actually working with. We won't have to take a survey and say, oh, what are the personality configurations of these happy people and these sad people? Oh, let's see, how can we divide them up? That's a classification system. We're going for a taxonomy, and that means we're going for a theory that unifies it all, that organizes it, and that makes sense of the whole thing. And the place that we are going to go is into these triads, into the different struggles, victories, and loss conversations that go on in the human mind. And we will dive into them beginning at the widest level, the group level, then diving into clusters, and finally diving into the individual character traits, as we are in fact dealing with a taxonomy. So I will see you again tomorrow night, where we'll be talking about the highest level of the taxonomy of the character traits themselves. What do these four groups, insight, resilience, balance, and empathy, have that make them similar to one another when they share a group, and different from one another when they are in separate groups? See you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye-bye.